rise and remain standing to receive the President, the Rector, and the Honorary Doctorate recipient. I'm pleased to invite Professor Chaim Haynes, Rector of the University, to enter the hall. I would now like to invite the President of the University, Professor Daniel Shamovitz, to enter the hall. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to invite the Honorary Doctorate recipient, Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. Please enter the hall. Be seated, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call upon the President of Ben Gurion University of the Negev, Professor Daniel Shamovitz, to address the Assembly.
Well, how exciting. Good morning, honored guests, members of the Diplomatic Corps, colleagues, and of course our honoree, Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. Our university proudly bears the name of David Ben Gurion, and we strive daily to meet the standards set by this great man, to adhere to his values and to realize his vision. From our unique vantage point in the Negev desert, we aspire to hold up his values. We believe that anything is possible, and that curiosity, openness, and flexibility are key to creating and imparting knowledge. This has been our privilege and duty every single day in the 52 years since the establishment of the university. In the words of David Ben Gurion, our country is small. The only greatness that awaits us, inherent in our essence, is the greatness of the spirit, science, the knowledge of the world and the universe, the discovery of nature and of being, in which we will arise and ascend. We bestow the doctorate honoris causa upon individuals who exemplify the characteristics that we wish up to hold as an inspiration to our students and as role models for our own community of scientists, scholars, and supporters. Individuals for whom excellence is not a buzzword, but rather an innate value. Your acceptance of an honorary degree from BGU reflects that honor back on our institution and what it stands for, providing a mirror within which we hope to see a bit of ourselves. And when I look in this mirror at your myriad of accomplishments, your priorities, I am pleased to see some of the directions that we as a university have also committed to. Your roadmap for green transition to battling climate change is perfectly aligned with the new Goldman Sonnenfeld School of Sustainability and Climate Change. For over 50 years, we have been learning how to live in our desert, and now the world comes to us to learn from our experience. And your long-term commitment to women's rights, gay marriage, and an inclusive democratic society is built into the DNA of our university, which sees its mission as building a shared academic society that uses higher education as a tool for societal transformation. We humbly realize that you do not need us to not acknowledge your accomplishments, and I thank you for your allowing us to honor you. I wonder if David Ben Gurion could have envisioned this gathering, this ceremony. I dare say that he would sit back and say, "I told you so." Because in 1959, David Ben Gurion told Israel's first ambassador to the EEC, as he was preparing for his mission, that the European countries, allies and former enemies alike, had embarked on their own road of economic cooperation to political unity. Their future economic well-being, he said, and social progress required the establishment of a closely knit community which would become a central force in world affairs, with Brussels at the center of the community. How fitting, then, that David Ben Gurion University houses the Simone Weil Research Center, the sole Jean Monnet Center of Excellence in Israel, dedicated to deepening and enhancing knowledge of contemporary political and social developments in Europe, as well as promoting awareness of the ever-growing importance of the European Union. Simone Weil, a Holocaust survivor who went to be the first woman to be president of the European Parliament, was a firm believer in European integration as a way of guaranteeing peace. And she was a great friend of our university, receiving an honorary doctorate in 2010. Dear President von der Leyen, by accepting this degree from our institution, you are continuing this line from Simone Weil, further strengthening our commitment to promoting Euro-Israel relations and European studies, and cementing our position as a national center of excellence in this crucial field. Your actions and accomplishments are an inspiration to all of us here today. I have no doubt that David Ben Gurion also had you in mind in his remarks from 1950. Some of us are pioneers. Some are able to motivate the people. And a few, a small few, go before the people to show them the way. Thank you for showing us the way.
Thank you, Professor Schamovitz. We now continue on to the conferment of the honorary doctoral degree. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, before our doctorate recipient is called to the podium, a short film will be shown highlighting her achievements.
In raising my daughters, I have always told them there's no such thing as jobs for men and jobs for women. Women and men in the jobs market should enjoy the very same rights and opportunities. When I was elected President of the European Commission, I promised that my commission would be the first gender-balanced one in our history. So everything can change with a bit of perseverance.
You have a very strong, wonderful partner in your husband, because I have 7 children. How did you two work it out?
Well, to be honest, the first 15 years of our marriage, he made a career, and my career did shrink over and over. And at the very end, I was a part-time working mom with 7 children, and he was a professor for medicine. The typical story. And then I was appointed Minister for Family Affairs, and all of a sudden, I had no time anymore. So he had to take over his duties as a father.
So if you share the positive benefit and the burden among the two of you, you have an enormous amount of strength that results from that.
We will fight anti-Semitism at all levels. We will never allow the Holocaust to be denied. We will fight with all our strength against discrimination, racism, and exclusion. And we want to see, and we will fight for, a normal life for Jews in Europe. You can rely on us.
Jewish culture has so much to teach us, and European Jews have contributed immensely to the making of modern Europe and to the shaping of our European identity. You have been a light unto the nations.
Fixing climate change calls for everyone's action, every day.
Protecting the environment, protecting the climate has a lot to do with innovation. We will need clean, innovative technologies. That's what we're looking into. And if the world does that, the demand for these technologies will be enormous. Therefore, it's such a business case and business opportunity for doing this development, research, innovation into clean technologies.
You can count on me, as I know I can count on you. It is a time for change. Let's make it happen together.
The university honors Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and confers upon her an honorary doctorate. I invite the President and the Rector to please come forward. I now ask President von der Leyen to join them. The scroll reads as follows. The Senate and the Executive Committee of the Ben Gurion University of the Negev hereby resolve to honor Dr. Ursula von der Leyen in recognition of an exceptional stateswoman, President of the European Commission, guiding the European Union towards a promising future by promoting democracy, peace, and unity among its members. In acknowledgement of her inspiring leadership, confidently steering the Union through upheavals and storms, including during the current war on the continent. With appreciation for the extraordinary skill she has applied in service of the public throughout multiple cabinet appointments in Germany, including as Federal Minister of Defense, Minister of Family Affairs and Youth, and Minister of Labour and Social Affairs. With sincere regard for her contributions to Germany's security and social justice, and her efforts on behalf of its women, children, and youth in particular. In gratitude to a true friend and ally for her uncompromising efforts to eradicate anti-Semitism and ensure the well-being of Jews throughout Europe, as well as her commitment to enhancing the standing of the State of Israel and deepening its ties with the EU. And with great esteem for her dedication to environmental protection and economic growth, and for her dauntless perseverance in advancing equal rights and opportunities for all people and for future generations, by conferring upon her the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. And now the President of the University will present a gift to President von der Leyen. Thank you, Professor Schamovitz and Professor Hames. It's now my honor to invite President von der Leyen to the podium to address the audience.
Thank you very much. Mazel tov. President Schamovitz, Professor Hames, Professor Pardo, Professor Mizrahi, Excellencies, dear faculty, dear students, Shalom. I feel honored and humbled by this recognition and the fact that the honorary doctorate comes from this prestigious institution, the Ben Gurion University in Negev, has a very special meaning for me.
This isn't only because the list of your doctor's honoris causa is truly impressive, from Simone Weil, as we've seen, to Itzhak Rabin. There's also a more personal reason for me. I am a European woman of German nationality. And not longer than 80 years ago, millions of Jewish people were murdered by Germans in the greatest crime of all human history. We in Germany take historical and enduring responsibility for this inhuman disruption of civilization. It is an indelible stain on my country's conscience, which we must never and will never forget. So it seems like a miracle that a German like me is welcomed and honored here in the State of Israel as a friend among friends only a few generations after the Shoah. But it is no miracle. My being here is the consequence of a choice made by the State of Israel and by one man above all, the great David Ben Gurion. It was he who took the first historic step towards reconciliation with the Germans. He believed that the best way to honor the victims' memory was to build a better future. It is also to the credit of David Ben Gurion that my country looked the victims of our crimes in the eyes for the first time. The young German democracy grew stronger because of its developing friendship with the new state of Israel. We faced our guilt and our responsibility. And all this while the European project was taking its first steps. The very reason why the European Union was founded lies in two simple words: never again. A new generation of Germans was raised with that premise, including myself. And I can say without reservation that I would not be here today if it wasn't for David Ben Gurion. As long as I can think, I was convinced of two very simple facts. First, there is no Europe without European Jews. And second, Europe and Israel are bound to be friends and allies, because the history of Europe is the history of the Jewish people. Europe is Simone Weil and Hannah Arendt. Europe is Mahler and Kafka and Freud. Europe is the values of the Talmud, the Jewish sense of personal responsibility, of justice, and of solidarity. Today, almost 80 years after the Shoah, Jewish life in Europe is thriving again. Countries like Portugal and Austria are rediscovering their Jewish heritage. I see it in Brussels too. As the little film showed just a few months ago, I had the honor to light the Chanukah menorah in the heart of the European Quarter. What an experience. And yet, European Jewish life is also embattled and endangered. Anti-Semitism has not disappeared. It still poisons our societies. And anti-Semitic attacks happen today in Europe. It is a new threat, but it is the same old evil. Every new generation must take responsibility so that the past does not return. And this is why I have put the fight against anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life in Europe at the core of the European Commission's agenda. Our democracy flourishes if Jewish life in Europe flourishes too. Throughout the centuries, the Jewish people have been a light unto the nations, and they shall be a light unto Europe for many centuries ahead. We have more in common than the geography would suggest. Our shared culture and values have created a deep connection between Europe and Israel. And I'm not just talking about Israel's participation in the Eurovision Song Contest and the Champions League. The strongest bond we share is our belief in democracy and in democratic values. And here again, Ben Gurion's legacy is enduring. Ben Gurion believed that Israel's strength depends on its democratic institutions. And only in a democracy would citizens feel compelled to take responsibility for their common home. And he is so right. Thanks to this conviction, the state of Israel has flourished ever since. You have become a prosperous nation, even in the most challenging of circumstances and in a complicated region. You championed women's rights in unlikely times, and Golda Meir's leadership inspired women across the world, me as a young girl too. Your freedom of thought has turned a small country of just a few million into a global trailblazer for science and innovation. And democracy has strengthened our special bond of friendship through the decades. Today, more than ever before, democracies like Europe and Israel should come closer together. Not because our democracies are perfect. They are not. No democracy is. Democracies often offer the environment in which diverse societies can thrive, and they are challenged like never before. And we can help each other to overcome these challenges. So together we can get one step closer to the ideals of our founding fathers and mothers. Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to focus briefly on three of these challenges. The first is the challenge stemming from autocracies. The second is climate change. And the third is democratic backsliding. The most direct of these challenges comes from authoritarian regimes outside our borders. And indeed, what we witness in these days, Russia's aggression of Ukraine, is a war against democracy itself. It is a war against the idea that the people of Ukraine can take sovereign decisions about their own future. Year after year, Ukraine's diverse and vibrant civil society has pushed for positive change and has strengthened the country's democratic institutions. And this is exactly what the Kremlin is fighting against. It couldn't be more symbolic that the first Russian bombs in Kiev fell right by the gate of a Holocaust memorial, and that the Russian propaganda is built on the abominable rhetoric of denazification against a democratic Ukraine. We see with great worry that the age-old threat of scapegoating the Jewish people in times of war, and I know that Israel has helped Ukraine with tons of humanitarian aid and a field hospital, and you have welcomed tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees to your land. In a war against democracy, we all have a stake. And for us Europeans, the stake couldn't be higher. the Kremlin has used our dependency on Russian fossil fuels to blackmail us. And since the beginning of the war, Russia has deliberately cut off its gas supplies to Poland, to Bulgaria, to Finland, to Dutch companies, to Danish companies, in retaliation of our support of Ukraine. But the Kremlin's behavior only strengthened our resolve to break free of our dependency of Russian fossil fuels. For instance, we are now exploring ways to step up our energy cooperation with Israel. We have two major projects in preparation: the world's longest and deepest underwater power cable connecting Israel with Cyprus and Greece. And this will over time be electrification from renewable energies. That's where the investment has to go into. You have an abundance of these natural resources to produce renewable energy. And the second is a gas and clean hydrogen pipeline in the Eastern Mediterranean. This is an investment in both Europe's and Israel's energy security. And this infrastructure will also contribute to decarbonizing our energy mix. It is a great example of democracies sticking together, not only in times of conflict, but mostly to fight this huge enemy we have, and that is climate change. This is the big looming crisis in the background. And we have to take all our knowledge, all our engineering and entrepreneurial spirit we have to innovate, to bring about the innovative technologies, to work to fight climate change, to make this world a better place, and to hand it over to our children with still a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter to experience. Climate change is this great challenge that our democracies are fighting. And no one understands that better than you here in the Negev. David Ben Gurion believed that here in the Negev, Israel's creativity and its pioneering spirit would be tested, as he said. He always spoke about the duty to make the desert bloom. And that is exactly what you've done ever since. And I've listened to what I was told about this university. As we can see in your School of Sustainability and Climate Change, I marvel at how you're testing new building materials that can withstand the desert heat, nature-based solutions, and how you have managed to adapt food crops to the desert climate. With the looming food crisis, we know that these will be the technologies that will make the difference, whether we will master the food crisis and over time have independent production in the vulnerable countries or not. You have, with all that, quite literally made the desert bloom. And today, the solution that you've been researching for decades can change the life of millions across the world. A few weeks ago, I was in Davos, where President Herzog spoke exactly about that. It was an important speech which resonated well beyond our region. And President Herzog called for a new alliance, and I quote, to shape not only a new Middle East, but a renewable Middle East. A Middle East that thrives as a global hub of sustainable solutions in food, water, and health, and as a source of solar energy to Europe, Asia, and Africa. End of quote. I couldn't agree more with this vision. For decades, Europe and Israel have cooperated closely on science and innovation. Just last December, Israel joined the EU's massive research and innovation program. It's called Horizon Europe, and has a budget of almost 100 billion euros. It is now time to put our cooperation at the service of the ones who need it most and at the service of fighting climate change. And ladies and gentlemen, the first and final challenge to democracy that I would like to address is perhaps the most subtle one.
This challenge is within. It is the risk of backsliding that all our democracies face. Democracy is necessarily a work in progress. It must be exercised and renewed each and every day. Each of our democracies is different and unique, but ultimately, democracy in all its forms comes down to the same thing. As Ben Gurion always said, he said the outstanding attribute of democracy is not government for the people. It is government by the people. Democracy gives people a voice. It gives them the power to change things with their vote. In democracies, we even fight for other people's freedom to disagree with us. The freedom to speak your mind, the freedom to change your mind, the freedom to be yourself, so that if you are different from the majority, you are always equal before the law. And this is what binds democracies together. The recognition that we are all different, yet all equal. Today, this is challenged in many ways. Societies are becoming more fragmented, public debate has become more polarized, and it gets harder and harder to focus on the common good. From the attacks against the rule of law and free press and free research in some parts of Europe, to minority rights and coexistence here in the region. Democracies must have room for everyone, including those who think differently, who believe differently, or who come from a different region. Israel is a vibrant democracy. Its resilience is admired worldwide. Israel's society is incredibly diverse. For example, I was impressed to learn that over 800 students from the Bedouin community are studying here at Ben Gurion. Israel is a small slice of land where people of all faiths and born on all continents live together. Families who have lived here for generations and families who have just arrived. Diversity can be an immense strength. Yet the path towards peaceful coexistence is long. And democracy is never accomplished once and for all. This is also true for the European Union. Like other democracies, Europe faces external threats ranging from disinformation and interference in our elections, as well as challenges from within our societies, ranging from nationalism to xenophobia, from revisionism to anti-Semitism. We must strengthen our democracies and our way of life in democratic ways every single day. We must nurture our openness and our diversity. We must defend the freedom of our media, the independence of our judges, the equality of all people before the law. Keeping democracy in good health is hard work, but it's worthwhile work. Imperfect though it might be, this is the best thing about democracy. Autocrats cannot admit mistakes. Democracies can always improve and correct because we, the people, can always make it better. Because we, the people, are the ultimate guardians of democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, on each one of the challenges that I have addressed today, I feel my generation's responsibility to leave you a better world than the one we inherited. But it is you, the young generation that I see here in the room. It is you, each and every one,
who will write the next chapter. It is your energy, your empathy, it is your knowledge, your tolerance, it is your hard work, your love, that will shape the world and democracies of tomorrow. And that makes me confident. Because your generation is also the most educated, the most climate conscious, and the most open-minded the world has ever seen. Ben Gurion said in the early days of the State of Israel, independence does not only mean liberation from a foreign yoke. Independence has a positive meaning. And that is the most important. The positive content of independence means responsibility, it's independence of the heart, and it is independence of the will. End of quote. Long live Europe. Am Israel Chai.
Thank you, President von der Leyen, for that important and moving address. I now invite Professor Chaim Hames, Rector of the University, to deliver his greetings.
Her Excellency, Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, distinguished ambassadors and diplomats, faculty and students, ladies and gentlemen, Madam President, your eloquent remarks almost make my remarks superfluous, but there are things that are worth repeating, so please bear with me. Israel is a country that was established and developed mainly by immigrants who came from the Arab world, North Africa, and of course Europe. Indeed, it has been said that historically, geographically, religiously, and even culturally, Israel is from Europe, but not in Europe. The history of the Jewish people and the Zionist movement as an intellectual and political force that gave birth to the modern state of Israel are without doubt deeply interwoven with the histories and cultures of Eastern and Central Europe. And as Professor Shlomo Avineri warns, anyone who fails to understand this will be unable to grasp much of the structure and nature of Israeli society, its politics and culture, both on the practical and symbolic level. In this regard, a reflection made by Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben Gurion, after whom our university is named, in a letter to the Lebanese-Egyptian diplomat and historian George Antonius, explains the close bond between Israel and Europe. Although we are an Eastern people, we have become a European people, and we wish to return to the land of Israel only in the geographical sense. Our aim is to create a European culture here, and we are at any rate linked to the major cultural force in the world, as long as the cultural basis in this part of the world does not change. End of quote. And indeed, the European Union is Israel's economic, educational, cultural, and in many respects political hinterland. Israel's engagement with the European Economic Community, the EEC, began even before the 1957 founding Treaty of Rome entered into force. In May 1957, less than 2 months after it was signed, the treaty was already translated into Hebrew and published in Israel. In fact, in mid-1957, there were those in the Israeli establishment who worked hard to develop Israel's initial relationship with the EEC into a full economic and political membership. Such was Israel's enthusiasm to get closer to united Europe that the young Shimon Peres, then Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Defense and Special Envoy of Prime Minister David Ben Gurion, he met secretly with Jean Monnet, one of the founding fathers of the European Union, in order to explore the idea of Israeli economic and political accession to the EEC. In April 1958, Israel became the third country in the world after Greece and the USA to request the establishment of a diplomatic mission accredited to the EEC. And in February 1959, Israel was the fourth country in the world to establish full diplomatic relations with the European communities. In October 1995, Israel and the European Union concluded a research and development agreement through which Israel became the first non-European country to be fully associated with the Union's research programs, which are known today as Horizon Europe. Since 1996, Israeli academia in general, and Ben Gurion University of the Negev in particular, have been among the most active members in successive calls for research projects, and they are important sources of innovation in both basic and market-oriented research conducted in the European research area. Today, indeed, the European Union is Israel's largest source of research funding. As a historian whose work focuses on interreligious encounters, I feel obligated on this special occasion to recall the often violent and discriminatory attitude, including pogroms and expulsions towards the Jews on European soil over the past millennia, culminating with the Shoah, the Holocaust, a topic that I know, and we've seen and heard, has informed our honoraries' political career and activism over the years. While the foundation of the State of Israel and the establishment of close relations with the European Union has had, in the main, a positive effect, anti-Semitism is again on the rise and has become intertwined with anti-Israel sentiment. While on the one hand, our relationship is characterized by a strong and ever-increasing network of economic, educational, research and development, cultural and personal ties, and a will to be included as part of the European integration project. On the other hand, some Israelis are suspicious of the Union's policies and are untrusting of Europe's intentions towards the Middle East. Be that as it may, and as you so eloquently said, in a rapidly changing world with global challenges such as climate change and war, we need to stand strong together and protect our common democratic values, which are so crucial for vibrant and functioning civil societies. We are proud to have a Simon Weil Research Centre for Contemporary European Studies, which coordinates the National Jean Monnet Centre of Excellence, along with the Jean Monnet Chair in European Integration Studies, held by Professor Sharon Pardo, which spearheads our efforts to become even more integrated with our academic partners in Europe. As you take leave from us and continue with your busy schedule, I would like to thank you for doing us the great honour of accepting the title of Doctor Honoris Causa from our university. With your distinguished record of leadership, creativity, vision and excellence, and your ongoing work for the betterment of Germany, Europe, Israel and the world, you are a role model for us all. In the words of Proverbs chapter 31, verse 29, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Professor Hames. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our very special event today. Please remain seated until the recipient of the Honorary Doctorate and President Sheimovitz and Rector Hames have left the Senate Hall. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. Shalom to you all.